to the right. The best wedding app brings your dreams to life.
The best wedding app. Well, welcome to the Best Wedding App podcast. Today we've got a very special guest who brings a unique perspective to one of life's most celebrated occasions, which is, of course, a wedding. I'm thrilled to have Holly Faye on. She is a dedicated bridal counselor who specializes in helping brides navigate the very can be emotional roller coaster of wedding planning and then transition into married life. Holly, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You have such a unique product and a unique aspect to for brides and grooms. What inspired you to specialize in bridal counselling, and how did your journey lead you to this very specialized niche?
Well, my background in counselling and social support, I really had a passion in sort of supporting people through life transitions.
Right.
At the same time, parallel to that, I run a Mustang wedding car hire business. I've been doing that for about 15 years. So pardon the pun, marrying those both together just seemed ideal because certainly in the wedding industry, the bit I love the most is connecting with the brides.
Yes.
Witnessing their stressful journey around planning a wedding, and
Definitely.
then seeing them on the day and seeing the transition, hopefully.
Yeah.
And I just saw this need for a little bit more emotional support for the brides at that time. They'll have wedding planners and I'll have family and friends around, but there was just something missing. And I just saw it there and I thought, well, is there anything out there for them at the moment? And I thought, well, I'm in a unique position to provide this niche. I have the counselling training and I have the experience in the wedding industry.
Wow, what a unique perspective and a beautiful way to marry two different sides of the coin. That's awesome. And particularly this year, actually, it hasn't happened to any of my clients, but it has happened to a few of my friends where a few brides have had panic attacks, etc., before the wedding. Now, obviously, that's a unique situation and it might not be possible to get you on the phone in that minute. What would you say if a celebrant or somebody else in the wedding industry came across someone in a wedding party who was panicked? So this particular bride, I think they ended up starting the wedding a few hours late. What would you say to them in that moment? Like maybe she had a history of actually speaking to you. Would you have then said to the suppliers that it would be a good idea to get you on the phone in that instance if that was a possibility? Or how would you navigate that?
Sure, if I'm available. I think if this bride had been seeing me in the past, leading up to the wedding, we would probably organise, if it looked as though there is a likelihood and a recurrence of these kind of panic attacks or potential, we'd have a safety plan in place. And she would take that with her on the day. She would also have a list of supports around her on the day that she can go to, and they would be aware of that as well.
Yeah.
There's that backup there. So these things happen on the day, and
it can be a frightening situation, right? For a supplier who's not well versed in this area to come across something like that. Your natural instinct in any sort of situation like this is fight or flight. And so if you don't know what to do, it'll be very easy to panic. So it is great to know that a service like yours is out there. And certainly if that couple had or that bride had any experience with somebody like you, it's good to know that they can then get on the phone if you're available and say, look, this is happening for me, or have that safety plan in place, especially if they were prone to having any sort of panic attacks.
So in that lead up, the people around her on the day could be prepared for that too.
Yes.
So it would be all in the planning.
Yeah.
Part of the wedding planning.
Yes, yep, so
Mm.
important, isn't it? What's the most common challenges that your clients face when they come to you, and how do you approach those issues?
It's just seems to be such a busy time. Um, so it's a lot of overwhelm. People in that sort of I may be a little bit generalistic here, but often brides are in the middle of sort of at that life stage. They're working on building up their career. They might even be looking at purchasing a home. There's a lot going around them, not just getting married. So when it comes to planning a wedding, it's just an extra stress, and they just become overwhelmed, and they don't know what to do. They just wonder, is it worth going ahead with this wedding?
Mm,
Um, Family conflicts is a big one. A lot of things come up from the past in regards to pleasing people,
mhm,
relationships.
mhm,
It's just a build up to a very stressful ending, and all
mhm,
they can picture is everything not quite going right. Well,
mm.
yes, so I think you know, even family conflicts, even your relationship with your partner can be strained at that time because you're
Mm,
focusing on the practical rather than the relationship a bit more.
mhm, mhm.
It's all hands down trying to work towards this date, and you lose the focus of the real reason you're getting married.
Yeah.
Even managing bridesmaids, um, just people pleasing, just trying to get the perfect wedding. I think there's a lot of people concerned about how they look, and there's body image and self-esteem issues.
So
Lots of
much going on, isn't there? And how do those
yeah.
anxieties typically manifest in your clients? Are they panic attacks, or are they just freakouts, or are they just frozen?
Um, I think by the time they come to me, they're trying to articulate it, and they find it hard to explain exactly what's going on.
Hmm.
There are various degrees of anxiety, and they all sort of come out in different ways.
Hmm.
Sometimes it is in that flight or fight, fight or flight response where they just freeze. They just don't know what to do next.
Hmm.
Um, I guess if you're thinking of symptoms, um, just a lot of worrying. A lot of people sort of stop focus. They can't concentrate properly on other things.
Hmm.
Um, they could be teary. Um,
Are there like early signs of anxiety that brides might encounter? Because, sometimes people don't even know that they're worrying, or don't even know what anxiety is, or don't recognize those feelings of stress. Can you talk us through some of those early anxiety feelings?
yeah, certainly a bit of anxiety is certainly natural, and sometimes it can be good for planning a wedding.
Yeah.
So it's realizing the degree, I guess. If you're persistently worrying and you're really finding it hard to concentrate, you're crying a lot, you might have physical symptoms like feeling sick, headaches all the time, not being able to sleep. Irregular sleep patterns might
Hmm.
be a big one.
Hmm.
Um, if you're feeling really tense and on edge, and you've got an increased heart rate all the time, or you're really panicky or just over teary, it's something to be very wary of, and to talk to someone about it. And
Yeah.
certainly as a professional, I would help brides recognize these symptoms,
Hmm.
and I would also determine if this is something serious that needs um, a more serious look at from a
Yeah. Yeah.
professional
So
point
you
of view.
sort of talk them through how to manage that anxiety effectively. And then if you feel like it's something that's beyond your scope, then you would refer them on to a doctor for anxiety medication or something like that.
Yes. So the first
Yeah.
thing is recognizing your behaviors and what's in the mind, but also feeling it in your body.
Yeah, and that's a big one, isn't it? It's all about being aware of what you're going through, and what what you're feeling and how that can be. I mean, as I said, some people are not even aware that those things are anxiety. And so it's great to be able to talk them through with someone and go, well, actually, I haven't been sleeping well and my stomach does feel like it's in a knot, and then work through those issues with you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how do brides distinguish between normal wedding planning stress and like more serious anxiety? Like, is that something that obviously you have conversations with them about what's normal and what's not normal? But I guess it's one of those things, isn't it, where things can compound quite quickly. And when you're in the moment, maybe you don't feel like once the wedding's over, these things are going to disappear for you.
Yes. Yeah. I think a big thing is recognizing that some anxiety isn't a bad thing and is it expected in a type of life transition like this.
Yeah.
So don't assume that it's all bad, but it's just managing it.
Yeah. And
And this,
sorry.
just distinguishing between your life before planning a wedding and how it is now, and just having a think about it, to think, well, is that reasonable? Is
Yeah.
that understandable, or is it a little bit too stressful, just a little bit out of control?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what specific techniques or tools that you use help brides manage their anxiety?
Depending on the individual, I guess. I use a lot of different ranges of techniques. I love the mindfulness practices, relaxation. I use some CBT, some cognitive behavioural things. Communication skills. It might sound really basic, but just going back to being able to communicate with others, all different type of people. Setting boundaries is a big thing.
Yeah.
And self-esteem, believing in yourself
Mm.
and knowing exactly what you want and how to communicate that to others. But it really depends on the individual. I may go into some skills related to attachment, and even some trauma-informed things. And some issues can come up from the past in the wedding planning.
Yeah, yeah,
Phase.
for sure, for
Yeah.
sure. And how do family dynamics typically impact bridal anxiety? I mean, there's obviously a range of different things that can happen with families, and I'm sure that this is a common reoccurring theme for you with your clients.
Oh, yes. A lot of it is conflicting expectations. It's your wedding, but a lot of family members like to provide input. They might be supporting financially, so they feel as though they have a say in what's going to happen. So a lot of tensions can come up. So it just comes down to more open communication and setting of
Yeah.
boundaries and understanding, I
Do
guess.
you
Yeah,
do you often have
between mother and daughter.
oh yeah. And I was going to say there must be a lot of disagreements about numbers at weddings, especially now in a cost of living crisis where parents have expectations of friends being invited, etc. That's not always viable for the couples. Do you encounter that a lot?
An absolute big one. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Numbers and who comes and who doesn't, who's going to miss out and who's going to pay for extra family members if they really want them to be there. And also, and it goes down to venue choice. There may not be room for 300 guests.
Yeah, and
In the
culturally, some cultures are, they're prone to having 400 or 500 people at a wedding, which, in Australia, there's not a lot of venues, that can hold that many people. But I mean, God, the financial strain of that in this climate would be so stressful.
Yes, and culture is a big thing because sometimes one member of the couple has a lot more guests they want to invite, and maybe a bigger family or just a bigger network. And sometimes they feel as though they want to be even and that can cause a little bit of conflict and confusion. Different cultural beliefs about how many should come.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's huge, isn't it? And what's your advice if you're a couple sort of managing your partner who might be going through some serious anxiety, not related to marrying the person, but related to other aspects of the wedding? As a partner of someone, what's the best way for them to navigate that and to be letting their partner really feel seen and heard in the moment?
If they're not going through some counselling, taking up some counselling themselves, I think it's the person who's learning about how to manage the anxiety to sort of pass that information on to them.
Mm,
The best way is just loving empathy, listening, communication, and understanding, and not worrying about everything being perfect.
And why do you think, Holly, there is, I mean, I know my own version of why I think what the answer to this question, but why do you think there is such an emphasis on couples to make their wedding day perfect?
Social media has a big impact on that. I'm sure that sort of it plays on a lot of emotions. Making it's a big life decision. And if this is something that people want to change and make this decision to stay for the rest of their lives, they want the day to be as memorable as possible because it's going to be the only one. But social media certainly plays on that a lot.
It's crazy, isn't it? To keep up with the Joneses and think that, well, they had this at their wedding, we need to have this at ours, but we can't afford that, but I really want that. I mean, and I need to look this way. I mean, there's so many outside influences and pressure that it's actually sad. I think it's sad that the phones have made us go down such a dark path almost, it's like you can't really just enjoy the day for the day because all of these outside influences are playing in on what you think your day should be.
Yes, certainly you look for inspiration, but it can just drag you down.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So, I guess the silver lining there is just to have your own inspiration for what you want your day to look like, but not to put too much pressure on it. If those things don't come to fruition, that's okay. And just be realistic with what your budget can afford, and remember that the day is really just about your love for one another, and a big party, and have fun in the moment.
Keep a sense of humour.
Yeah.
Looking back on the wedding, if the flowers weren't in the right spot or the music didn't work, or it's not such a big deal. Just have a bit of a laugh it off.
Yeah,
That's
that's
important.
right. For sure. And let's talk about like long-term coping strategies beyond the wedding day. What do you recommend to your clients to manage anxiety in married life? Like, do you often continue on with your clients once they're married, or, do your services with them sort of stop there? Do you find your clients then want to continue seeing you?
It's a variety.
Yeah.
During the wedding planning process, some people would have just a one-off session, or they might do a session of 6. Or some people are just a regular monthly client who wants to keep on going because they've established a good rapport with me and they know that it doesn't just stop after the wedding day.
No, that's right.
Benefit. Yeah.
And do you find that you need to help your clients prepare for a transition from wedding planning to married life in terms of what that looks like if they've not partnered in terms of a house together, not lived together before? Do you often feel like you then need to sort of talk people through, maybe they haven't, lived together before and they both have different expectations for how the house should run and those sorts of things?
Yes, yes. So it comes down to a lot of communication. And even if people have lived together, they realize that there are some subtle differences once they get married. Different approaches, different attitudes, have appeared that they didn't realise that they had, or they had with their partner, and they haven't communicated that. And suddenly there are different expectations when they get married
Yeah.
they weren't ready for.
Yeah.
So just comes down to communication.
And managing those expectations before they become a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the
Yeah.
communication is a big one, you know, have those big life moment conversations before you enter into marriage, i.e., do you want kids? You know,
Yes.
how do you expect the house to run? You know, those sorts of things. And, you know, thankfully our worlds have become more even keeled in terms of what each partner does it in your home life, and it's not so centered around one person anymore, which is lovely. But certainly if you've not lived with the person before, those things should all be discussed before, and great to know that they have someone like you to lean on should they have need expertise in that area, for sure.
A lot of unspoken expectations. They
Yeah,
really are. So yeah,
I bet.
communication. Yeah.
And Holly, can you share a success story or a memorable experience with us of one of your clients?
I was suddenly I was thinking about a bride that I was working with quite regularly up to the day, and the day didn't really go according to plan.
Mm.
You know, the outside venue had to become inside. She got caught in traffic because it was raining. Her father didn't come, those kind of things. We had sort of worked through some of those things beforehand, and where not everything can be predicted,
Mm.
she had that sense of humour through the day,
Mm. Mhm.
and she had the focus on what she really wanted from that day, and what were okay, if they happen, they happen. If they don't, they don't.
Mm.
She also had the self-care strategies right into the day down pat. She knew what was good for her. She had the self-compassion. So
Mm.
she could give herself a hug on the day and say, look, well, this really hasn't worked out the way I wanted to, but that's okay. That's
Mm.
all right. We'll be all right.
Mm.
And this is going to be a lovely day.
Mm.
And she really appreciated that focus that she wouldn't have had, on the day that she was proposed to. And she was sort of embarking this wedding planning process with all the decisions that need to be made,
Mm.
and the fear of making the wrong decision, spending too much money, family members not behaving the way they wanted to. She also sort of addressed all those things before the day.
Mm.
And so she knew what was important to her, and she was really happy.
Wow, that's lovely. And, you know, I think what you've said about maintaining a sense of humor is so important, right? To just be able to laugh those things off and not wear them, and move on and just enjoy the moment is so important.
Yes, it is, but it is a big day, and it's sort of focused as, this is now and forever. This is the ultimate. It's
Yeah.
only a life transition. You'll have a lot more life transitions after this.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's awesome that you could bring that insight to her and help her along on her journey. That's amazing. Now, the wedding industry is obviously always evolving. Do you feel like your counseling services have to evolve too to keep up with it? I mean, I guess essentially we've kind of covered a little bit of that in terms of social media and expectations. But do you feel like that's super relevant for you or not really?
Well, I guess that's a little bit of value in social media, keeping in touch with the community of professionals and brides that are getting married, the conversations between brides and their concerns. That's really valuable to keep in touch that way. As far as my counselling skills, I'm always learning more techniques and
Yeah.
and that kind of thing to keep up.
Yeah.
There are some basic ones, I guess, that probably never change.
Yeah.
But it's certainly, you don't want to remain in the dark ages.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
interesting. And do you feel like, I mean, we've gone through big ebbs and flows in our industry, right? We've had normal wedding industry, we've had COVID, weddings have dropped off, we've had to catch up, and now we've got this crazy cost of living crisis. Do you feel like the added pressure financially for young couples is a big stress for them with the wedding planning process?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And I do see that on the social media community pages, as
Yeah.
well as, in my other, wedding industry section where where people are wanting to have vehicles for weddings and things. They're cutting right back,
Mm-hmm.
and they're
And what
working
would
out
you,
what might be essential and what might not be.
yeah, I was just going to say, and what advice would you give them? But exactly that. What's essential, what's not, and how can you pare back your wedding and still have your dream day?
Yes, certainly work with your partner, but looking at your values,
Mm,
going back to your values and relating them to your wedding, and maybe prioritize them
mm,
and see how they look in relation to what your wedding will look like.
I guess, and remembering that the wedding is about your love for each other, and whether or not that takes place in a garden or a backyard or on the riverbanks or at a $1 million venue, it's all the same. It all comes
Yes,
back to that one day together, and your union is the most important thing. And whatever that looks like for you is okay. And if it's not what you originally had in your mind because you can't afford that, well, that's okay too. Because, as we know, there's ebbs and flows in life, and you do the best you can with what you're given at the time. And then you just need to be okay with that.
we all look back on memories of weddings, and although we may picture um, a beautiful venue, beautiful food, it's the relationships, it's the couple on the day, and the happiness and the interaction that they have on that day is the most memorable thing.
For sure, for sure. Holly, it's so lovely to know that your services exist for couples out there who may be experiencing some stress or anxiety. So just for everybody who's listening, so Holly can be found on the Best Wedding app. We'll link to her profile and also to her Instagram. She is well versed in her area and is insightful and amazing at what she does. So if you are experiencing any sort of anxiety or stress, know that there is somebody out there who can help you through that process and get you through the other side of it. And it's not a nice place to not feel grounded and safe in your planning journey, but to know that there's somebody out there who has your back is amazing. So thank you for the work that you do. We really appreciate it, and it's lovely to know that there's someone special like you out there for our couples.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you once again.
Thank you.